Greetings Tarnished, or should I say Nightverse. The network test for Nightreign is done. At the crack of dawn today, where I live at least, concluded the final phase of the ordeal. What started as a total disaster was quickly addressed by FromSoft and became mostly a smooth ride. In the beginning we literally couldn't get in to play with anyone, not random matchmaking was possible, nothing. The very few people who were able to connect consistently amassed a shitload of views, which is something that I might be a bit envious about, but what can you do? This is life. So it lasted for the better part of 5 days, and what we got was pretty much a vertical slice of the gameplay that included both random matchmaking and the ability to play with people of our choosing on the last couple of occasions. First and foremost, let's get some simple facts out of the way so we will not get confused. What you'll be seeing in the background is gameplay I recorded. There is not that much content in this test for me to be showing you a different slide every 2 minutes, so I did what I could, amassed as much as I could, and you'll be seeing it as I'm blabbering about my opinions on the game so far. Elden Ring Nightreign is a roguelite, a subcategory of the games known as roguelikes, which entails that after you're done with a run, with an expedition as the game names them, you retain something that you take home with you and that will empower you through your next expedition in order to do better. When we're talking pure roguelike, you don't retain anything, you just start from scratch every single time. People thought there is some element of Battle Royale in here, although the game is totally PvE, and that is because as time passes, a circle of blue flame closes in on the characters, forcing them to move and go towards a very clearly identifiable objective. There is a beam of light coming from the sky, and if you keep your eyes open, you can detect it and you know where you have to go to fight the boss of the phase. For the duration of the network test, the duration of each expedition spanned 3 days. It began during morning, then you went through a night cycle fighting a boss, then it was morning again, fought another boss, you get teleported into an alternate dimension, place, and then you had pretty much nothing to do except for heal, upgrade your stuff, and go into the final fight with the boss, the Gladius. The Gladius was pretty much a totally original design, and the centipede that you might also encounter throughout your expedition was the centipede from Dark Souls 1, but of course totally redone because the engine back then was ancient by today's standards. Which brings me to the talk about the asset flip nature of Nightreign. Asset flipping in Nightreign is a very realistic view, and I'm not gonna diminish its prominence by saying that people are throwing shade at the game. I'm not gonna play the cultist role here, I'm gonna give it to you raw and honest. Asset flipping is the thing that made Nightreign a possibility. They draw from all their games, you pretty much get a Sekiro animation as the ultimate for Wilder, who is the poster boy of the entire thing, and they create a hodgepodge where everything finds its way into the game in some manner or form, and then you can utilize all this stuff or fight all this stuff in case of enemies to create some sort of gameplay loop. And the gameplay loop, I have to be totally honest with you, is extremely fun and addicting, although I don't like using the word, it makes us feel like junkies or something. You choose your character, you go into the expedition, it starts pretty easy. Your very first level up is the most substantial you will get because you start with a health bar that's this small. You're a couple of hits from death. That forces people to converge in a specific location to fight off even the simplest of enemies. Once you hit your first level, you get your biggest chunk of upgrades, and then as you progress, you acquire mastery of higher rarity of items, and of course you'll be able to pick them up and use them. Sharing items, resources, equipment, all that is integral. That's why playing with randoms was not such a fun experience the first couple of days, but once it hit its stride, it was pretty amazing. And I have to give props to FromSoft for taking their core combat, making it faster by removing some of the limitation of the characters of previous games, and created something truly hybrid. You have the mobility of Sekiro for the most part, except for the grappling hook, and the moveset and versatility of the Hunter or the Tarnished, because you can equip gear and create your own builds on demand without having to just fall back to your katana every single time. Replayability here is gonna be insane unless they totally drop the ball with content updates. I don't think this is gonna be live service by any stretch of the imagination, but we'll have 8 classes to start with, apart from the 4 that we saw here, and there will be multiple maps, because initially I thought that's what they were gonna ship. And I was a bit skeptical. I was like, are you gonna ship a game with 4 classes and 1 map? Apparently it's not so. I cross-referenced it, and we're getting indeed more content than that. Now let's talk a little bit about the standalone nature of this game. I've heard talk from a lot of people saying you don't need to release Nightreign, you can just have it as DLC for Elden Ring, and so on and so forth. I do not agree with this whatsoever. Elden Ring's DLC, the Shadow of the Erdtree, cost 40 euros. 40, that's 4-0. For me, it's worth every cent. You get pretty much 80 hours of top tier gameplay on top of the first game, the original release, which is a masterpiece for the ages. Nightreign now allows you to just dish out 40 euros and get the game that is totally different in tone from the main game without having to own the core game. Because if it was DLC for Elden Ring, it would still cost 40 and you would have to own Elden Ring in order to play. Because this is not a Souls-like in any shape or form, okay, if you die you lose 1 level and then you can just go and grab your runes and reinvestment into getting a level if you have enough, but it is not the same thing as you lose your runes upon dying for a second time. You can be revived by your allies by breaking the darkness shroud that encapsulates you if you go down. And it is a very fast-paced experience, nothing like having to micromanage every step like in the Souls-like genre. For people who didn't really care about Souls-like, they didn't invest in Elden Ring, or they bought Elden Ring because of the hype and it took them nowhere because they didn't enjoy it, can pick up Nightreign without a worry in the world about whether or not it's a good investment. Drop in with a couple of friends, play for half an hour and then drop out and go about their merry business. The game is very, very geared towards quick sessions without a lot of time commitment. What I have been asked a lot is there some sort of consistent economy in the game. When you finish an expedition or you fail an expedition, you get some relics that you can use in rituals. These are passive buffs that you have throughout the entirety of an expedition. You just create combinations of these relics at base, and then these effects will carry over in every single expedition with the character unless you change the configuration. You don't waste them, they don't dissolve or become one-use items, they just stay with you until you sell them. And when you sell them, you get runes that stay with you at base and you can invest them in some sort of emporium. We saw a glimpse of that in an in-game message, but the character you're supposed to interact with was not in the test. So yeah, you will probably be able to equip your character to some extent and prep the rituals in order to go into the expedition stronger. There is an arena to test your abilities and your gear, your movesets right there at base, and for the most part the round table of this dimension is an empty husk of what it is in Elden Ring. You just see yourself in there, the other classes standing around as supposed people, and I suppose we're also gonna have a couple of NPCs that will do stuff for us. And that is it. It is a void space with pretty much nothing in it. You set up your expedition and you only see your allies in the cinematic that plays every time you jump back into a mission. Let's call them missions because it rolls out the tongue faster than expedition. Very, very fast process that is not as time consuming as going through a huge ass area methodically. Now the scope of these areas, well, let's say we take parts of Limgrave and other surrounding places in the lands between, we crush them together, and what remains is the map we got for the network test. It is really big, not as huge as the entirety of Elden Ring, of course. You don't need as much. You get an infinite, not stamina consuming sprint to move around because you don't have torrent, and other means of traversal like jump pads and the ability to glide on a spectral eagle to approach places that are very high up, or if you just don't want to walk because the terrain is treacherous, you grab on the eagle from specific spots and you just glide where you want to go and you gain access to the area, no questions asked. It is very user-friendly, very quality of life focused, and for the most part you will be fighting and looting and not traversing huge stretches with nothing in between, which is super important because in these games where the overall duration of an expedition is small, you don't want to spend the biggest chunk of it just running around looking for points of interest. You have a map, you can ping the map for allies to see, everyone is color-coded. It is pretty much standard practice for games that include a lot of running around and a lot of looting. You're gonna call it the influence of Battle Royale? Be my guest, but it's only PvE, and I think Battle Royales in general are not right now where it used to be a few years ago. PvP in this game, 3v3 for example on the open map where you could detect your enemies, would tie in real nice, but it would have to be a dedicated mode, because if you get casual players in this environment where the sweats will be dominating everything from the first day, it's gonna be nightmare fuel and people will just F out and never touch the game again. They're starting with their sole focus of PvE, and for me at least, this is the best way they could have gone about it, because it will make it very newcomer friendly. They won't teach people who play Nightreign how to play Souls-likes, but for me it is a very nice test in order for them to flex their muscles when it comes to doing more robust co-op elements. Now when it comes to the connectivity, once it was fixed, it was awesome. We didn't have any disconnects, we didn't have any crashes, it was amazing, and I will give them props once again for fixing the mess they created in less than 24 hours. No crossplay though. FromSoft, what the F? It's 2025 and you are selling a game which core focus is to play with other people. Why restrict your demographic like that? Dish out the dough, Kadakawa, and create some sort of server structure for crossplay. This is insanity. You're restricting your potential demographic so much. It cannot be that expensive. This is not the FromSoft from 2009 with Demon Souls. It's a huge ass company now. Why not invest in infrastructure that you will be able to use in the future to optimize the gaming experience? It's baffling to me. Makes no freaking sense. The duration of his expedition is about 30 minutes if all goes well, and according to how much you clear, you reap that many rewards and you go back to base and you are alone back at base again and nothing else is happening. There is no ceremony, no insane cutscene, nothing like that, but the network test is not an indication of the direction of the game because it's super bare bones. We participated in this network test in the past and we pretty much know what the deal with them is. Graphics use the same engine as Elden Ring, the sound uses the same engine as Elden Ring, it's all very beautiful, sounds very nice, but it's ultimately pretty ancient tech that will have to be updated at some point, because again, FromSoft now is a big ass company, they get to play with the big boys, and the big boys mostly invest in bling. That's why we get so many bad games these days. People want their games to look nice, but they have nothing to show for themselves gameplay-wise. FromSoft has the gameplay nailed out for years now, time to invest in some tech. So I don't want to take up the entirety of your day, people. You asked for this vid and I'm happy to provide. These are my thoughts after playing for a shitload of hours. I pretty much attended all but one of the tests and streamed them. It was a very stressful week so far. But now we can catch our breaths and discuss what we experienced. Subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell, guys. I will be covering this in superbly deep detail when it comes out, so follow the channel for more. Until next time, well, stay frosty and always have for perfection. Cheers!